Blog Talk Radio.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this late-night edition of The Right Stuff here on Blog Talk Radio Network. I'm your host, AshleyFontaine, and tonight's guest is fitting and appropriate for the month of October because it's horror writer Shane K.P. O'Neill, who is coming to us all the way from Norway tonight. So we're waiting just for a few seconds to try to get him on the line here. I think we might be having a little bit of trouble with Skype, but he'll be here shortly. Shane is the author of the Dracula Chronicles, which is, for horror fans out there, a must-read. It chronicalizes a different aspect and a different viewpoint about the legend of Dracula. And as my friend and fellow host Bennett Pomerantz used to always say, he wants his vampires not to sparkle but be scary. And according to everything that I've read about Shane's books, he fits that category very well. Hold on, I think we have him on the line. Just a second. Shane, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Shane, welcome to the show. How are you this evening? Or I guess it's morning your time, isn't it?
It's 5 a.m. for me, yeah.
Well, thank you for getting up so early to come be on the show. I appreciate it. I was just telling the audience that you're the author of the Dracula Chronicles, and it was fitting since it's October and it's the month of horror here. So let's get right into it, shall we?
Yep.
I read your bio, and you have been fascinated with the legend of Dracula ever since you were a young child and saw the very first Dracula movie with Christopher Lee. So it was just a natural fit when you started writing to go in this particular avenue. So what is it that makes your series so dark and demented?
Well, it's a series that combines the real historical Vlad Dracula with my own version of the mythical vampire. And it's set against the premise of Lucifer trying to ascend again to heaven through the destruction of the institution of the Catholic Church. So I've tried to keep the theme consistent with the dark Gothic vampire and using the real historical context. I've tried to explore new avenues with the vampire, setting it within real historical context where the influence of the Catholic Church was damaged at the time. And of course, in my stories, it's Dracula who's propagating all these instances in history where the influence of the church is damaged or wanes.
Very interesting concept, an interesting take on Dracula. So I know you're also a history buff, so how much research did you do before you sat down and started writing the first novel?
Well, the project's been with me for over 20 years, and from the early books that I was writing, which are going to become much later stories in the series now, I was researching the whole time, and I would say at least 5 or 6 years of solid research went into the writing of these books. I want my history to be correct, so I don't want there to be any holes where another historian can come up and say that's not correct, that's not true. So I worked very hard to make sure that everything was accurate and to be able to then blend my own story into the real history. And I've also found holes in historical texts which I've been able to manipulate and fill the gaps that were there that are not explained in the historical text. So my research was pretty intense over time.
It sounds like it. That's a long time to do some research for a book. Did you go and visit any of the historical locations that Vlad Dracula was actually part of during that time he was alive?
Unfortunately, I've not been to Romania as yet, but my research has been pretty extensive, so I'm pretty confident that I've managed to convey the situations where he lived and I don't know what I want to use. Yeah, I'm pretty confident that my depictions are correct for the time.
So do you ever see yourself you've written other books as well that are not dealing specifically with Dracula, but they're all in the horror genre. Do you ever see yourself writing something outside of that genre, or are you just that's your passion and that's what you're going to stick with?
I do have ideas for other historical novels, but they're going to be on the back burner for a very long time. This series is probably going to keep me busy for another 10 or 12 years. And of course, I have the second series now, The Tales of the Black Sabbath, which are short horror stories. And I have ideas I want to work on at some point for other vampire novels. So I guess I'll be sticking with horror consistently over time.
I have a question for you. A lot of people feel that when the book Dracula was actually written, that it really dealt with the social issues of the time, especially when it came to the way Victorian society dealt with sex. Do you bring a lot of that out in your book, or are you strictly on the horror side of what it's like to be this living thing that never dies, that has to survive on human blood?
Well, there's no similarity really between my Dracula and Bram Stoker's Dracula. The only real comparison is the name. Stoker obviously based his ideas on pamphlets that he would have read that would have circulated around Europe at the time of the real Vlad Dracula. My Dracula is very different to his, and so none of my writing would really bear the themes of his books from the Victorian era, or the end of the Victorian era, as his was. So, no, I don't really think there's any comparison between his and mine. I mean, my vampires are sexual as well, of course. I think they should be very erotic creatures, but I deal with it in a much different way to the way he did.
Interesting. So, tell us a little bit about this new series that you have coming out, Tales of the Sabbath.
Tales of the Black Sabbath. The name is a tribute really to a personal tribute to the band Black Sabbath, who I've loved for 30 years or more. Of course, the only similarity between my stories and the rock group are the actual titles of each of my stories. But from my perspective, they're just each story explores the darker recesses of the human psyche, and the one I've released to date, Orchid, deals with insanity, evil, and the lengths that a man will go to for the one he loves, be they good or bad. So
that was very intense.
Pardon?
I said that book was very intense, Orchid was.
Yes, you've read that one yourself, haven't you?
Yes. And you're right, it does. People will do and go to great lengths and sometimes even cross over and do things that they never would have thought in their wildest dreams would be possible when it comes to love and loss and that feeling of trying to get something back that you feel that you desperately need. I think you bring that out very well in that book.
Absolutely. When you're pushed to the absolute limit, there's no knowing what you might do in that situation. So that's what those stories are trying to convey, the limits that people will go to, and the darker limits that people will go to for the things they love or want.
That's so true. So tell us a little bit. Now, you're an indie author like I am, and I would like to know why you chose to go that route as opposed to going through the quote-unquote traditional publishing.
Well, originally I did try the traditional route, which was long before the advent of e-publishing. I had a representative in New York who was very well connected and got me talking to lots of influential people. But at the time that I was trying to bring my first Dracula novel out, Elizabeth Kostova's Historian was also due for release, and many of the publishing houses didn't feel that it would be good to have two different Dracula books competing at the same time. So her book had received a huge advance and had huge publicity, and they thought the market was saturated for Dracula at that time. So that was the reason that nobody went with me. But in hindsight, I'm glad that it happened that way, because I don't think I was ready at the time. And my series has evolved much more, and my writing style has improved much more in the 8 or 9 years since that time. So it's worked out the way I'd like to. It's the way I wanted it to work out, really, and I'm quite happy with the path that I've chosen.
That's good, and it's definitely things have changed so much in the publishing industry, even just in the last few years. And being an indie author and having control over everything has its advantages and its disadvantages. Obviously, the biggest advantage is you get the majority of the royalties, but you also get the creative control that I think a lot of people lose when they give away, they sign up with someone and lose that ability to, do the covers and how you're going to market it and all that kind of stuff. So what do you do in terms of marketing?
Well, I'm no expert in the area, as I guess a lot of us aren't. It's a case of trial and error and trying different things and seeing what works and what doesn't. I use the more well-known media outlets, the same as most indie authors, I suppose. But I haven't discovered any magic formulas yet to bring my work to the wider audience. So I think it's just a case of being patient, working hard, and just building your brand slowly over time. And of course, as I bring out more stories in the Dracula Chronicles, I guess more people will become aware of me, and if they like one of my books, then they'll go for another one. But outside of Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Goodreads, I'm not really too well aware of what methods are best to promote my book. So I just use those at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what everybody does, because there's so many other options out there. One can get lost in trying to navigate all of them, and it's kind of easier just to stick to the bigger ones.
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
So what has your family thought about all of this? When you published the first book, what was their reaction, and how has that been in terms of them dealing with the fact that Dad is a writer?
Well, I've been writing for very many years, and long before I ever released any of my books. So my family has been aware of what I've been doing for a very long time. I'm not sure they ever believed that I would ever do it or achieve anything, but now that my name and brand are building slowly over time, I think they're quite proud of what I've done. My children are very proud. And my mother actually congratulated me last week when I saw her when I was in the UK, so that was a nice surprise.
That's great, and that's so important to have that support for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even though we go it alone, we can't do it alone. I mean, there's a vast network of people behind us, with our book designers, our friends who shout our name, and of course our families. Without them, I don't think it would be possible to achieve anything. Exactly.
So what is your writing process like? I'm assuming that you still work, like everybody else that I know, a full-time job. So when do you find time to write, and when you do, how is that process like for you?
I don't know what other writers are like. I tend to work in cycles where I write feverishly for months and months and months, to the detriment of everything else in my life sometimes. And then I have periods where I know it's terrible, but I'm trying to manage it better now. But there have been periods also where I've not written anything for a long time. Not from writer's block or anything, just I find that when I'm really happy in my personal life, I tend not to write, and when I'm not so happy in my personal life, I write loads. I don't know.
Well, considering you write horror, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it would. But I think the human psyche works better when it's not happy. I've seen studies that have suggested that writers, when they're depressed, write more, and the mind works better. The cognitive processes within the mind work better in those situations. I think it's very true of me. But now that my books are out there and people are waiting for more of my books, I'm having to dedicate more and more time and be a lot more professional about it.
Yeah, it is a strange thing when you get that first email from a fan saying, okay, when's the next book, because I'm dying here.
Yeah, I get lots of those emails.
They got to know what's going to happen next. So when you are actually sitting at the computer writing, are you one of those that has to have complete silence so you can think, or do you rock out to Black Sabbath or your favorite group, and the more noise the better?
I tend to be a night owl and write a lot at night, and obviously it's very quiet in those times. But I've often written with the kids all in the room and the TV blaring, and I'm cooking dinner at the same time, so I can do either. In an ideal world, it's great to have a quiet location to write and think. But even when I'm alone writing, I tend to have music playing in the background, definitely, yeah.
I always find that question and answer interesting with other authors, because it's so varied. Half say, oh no, got to have complete silence, and others are like, nope, the more the better, because it makes my mind think about 100 different things and I can incorporate it into my work. So,
when you're a parent, I mean, you can't always have those times. So, yeah, you have to do both, I guess.
Yeah, that is so true. So what else is on the plate for you in terms of other series or other books that you're writing?
I can't really think too far ahead at the moment. I've released the 2 Bound by Blood volumes, which introduced the vampire first in my series, but now I've gone back to the beginning of the series, and I have the first Bound by Blood 1 and 2 are Chronicles number 6 and 7, but now I'm releasing later this month on the 31st Chronicle number 1, which is called For Whom the Bell Tolls. That begins with the First Great War of the Angels, which is what my concept is based on, and the divide in heaven as a result. And then it goes to the crucifixion, and then to the time of Dracula's birth. Right up to 1447, 1438, around the time he first wins his throne. And then Chronicle number 2, The Path to Decay, is coming out the following month. So there's a lot of activity going on at the moment, getting those ready for release, and obviously making people aware that they're going to be out soon. Chronicle number 3, then, The Gates of Babylon, will be out in the middle of next year.
Wow, that's a lot going on. That's a lot of editing and a lot of preparation.
Oh yeah.
Do you have any hair left, or have you pulled it all out yet?
I've still got my hair, thankfully.
Well, it can be hectic when you have a lot going on.
It's the wife and children that make the hair fall out, not the writing process.
No, the writing process is the fun part. It's what comes after you're done with the book that's the part that, for at least for me, that stresses me out.
Yeah, I think 75% of the work is actually after you've written the book.
Yeah, that is so true. So tell everybody where they can find you online and where they can find your books.
At the moment, my books are still only available on Amazon. If you do a search for Shane K. P. O'Neill, or just type in Shane K., my page will come up. I haven't explored any other retail outlets as yet. You can find me on my website at www.draculachronicles.co.uk, and that's a pretty comprehensive website that gives plenty of information about my books, reviews, interviews, everything. I'm also on Goodreads. I have a Facebook fan page as well, Shane O'Neill Dracula Chronicles, and there's quite a bit of information about the books on those on those websites.
Well, that's great. Now, are your books available in print as well, or only ebook?
The actual novels themselves are in paperback. The prequels that I brought out a prequel for the two Bound by Blood books called The Birth of the Monster. That's only available in digital formats. The same with The Lamb of God, which is the prequel to the two books coming out now as well. That's only available in digital format as well. And my Tales of the Black Sabbath are also only going to be ebooks.
That's interesting. And really, it's such a great thing having that availability now because, I mean, like for me, I don't have a Kindle, but I have the Kindle app on my phone. So I can have 40 or 50 books on there and could read at any time. It's a great way, and I know a lot of other people do the same thing. So the whole ebook revolution has really changed the publishing industry.
Absolutely, and I love my Kindle, so my mind is loaded.
It's nice to be able to haul around one little thing that's full of so much information.
I know, it's fantastic. And these things are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller.
That's right. So let me ask you this. As a writer, and as obviously a fan of horror, who are your favorite writers and what do you like to read?
I actually read a lot of historical stuff. I read all of Con Egerton's books. He wrote the Emperor series about Julius Caesar and the Conqueror series about Genghis Khan. I think his books are absolutely fantastic, and I love him. I read a lot of indie writers now as well. I've read some of yours, which are very good, if anyone's listening.
Well, thank you.
I read a guy called Luke Roman, a new writer from Australia. He writes in the horror genre as well. I've read quite a few of his over recent months. And a lot of my indie friends, I've read a lot of their books, but for famous writers, I tend to read Stephen King. I never used to like him so much, but as I get older, I'm starting to appreciate him more and how fantastic a writer he actually is. I love his work. I like Dean Koontz, Richard Lehman, James Patterson, Karu Safon, Sean Hudson. These are the people I tend to read the most.
Oh, yeah. Those are some of the great ones, for sure. And then Stephen King is probably one of my favorite authors ever. Everything he's ever written, I've read.
Yeah, he is fantastic. I struggle with one or two of his books historically, but in the main, he is fantastic. It would be nice to be as successful as he is.
So what do you see yourself, you said earlier that the Chronicles is going to be quite an extensive series. How many books do you think it's going to be until you feel you've finished this series?
I really don't know. Originally it was going to be 8 books, but they were all between 200 and 350,000 words, and of course in this current age of digital publishing, those are way too long. So I'm starting to split them up into smaller volumes, and it's kind of running away with me a little bit at the moment. At the least, I envisage it being 14 or 15 books, but it could even be more by the time they're done.
Wow. That's a lot. So how old were you when you first released the first novel?
I actually released the first one in December last year, so it's less than a year ago. And I won't say
recent.
I won't say how old I was. But
wow. Old enough that you've had all these words ready to go all this time that you've worked so diligently to research, and now they're just popping just one right after another. That's great.
Mm-hmm. So far, I would say I've written about 1.2 million words in the series.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, because a lot of the books are written, but haven't seen the light of day as yet, so there's lots more to come.
Well, we only have about 5 minutes left, so the last thing I'd like to ask you is there anything that you'd like to say to your fans out there now that you have a moment to do so?
Well, firstly, I'd like to thank everyone who supported me and everyone who's shown an interest in my work and all the wonderful comments that people have written to me or said to me. For people who are still not familiar with my work, I can tell you they're historical novels with a difference, with a dark Gothic theme running through them. It combines the real Dracula with the historical Dracula in a way that no one's done before. I know another writer has recently attempted the same thing, though I don't know how well. Previously, books I've read about Dracula, the man, have never really captured the true essence of who I believe he was. So I'm hoping that with my books, now that I've achieved this, and that people will feel the same when they read them. The first 5 books in the series are all about the real Vlad Dracula, of course, with the dark undercurrents of Lucifer trying to ascend again to heaven, and Lucifer's manipulation of him to become the instrument to achieve his ends. But it's not just a horror novel or a historical novel. There are a lot of other aspects to the books, and I do cross a lot of genres. They're violent stories, and some people have criticized the violence in them, but I'm trying to depict accurately the age in which he lived. But they're also stories of deep romance. So there are many aspects to these stories, and a lot to keep you interested and to hold your interest. And I just write to entertain, and I want to entertain people, and I want to introduce them to the world that exists inside my mind. And I'm pretty confident if you read the chronicles with an open mind that you will love them and be looking for the next one when it comes.
Well, that's great. I know you have a lot of fans out there, because judging just by the many reviews that you've had on Amazon and Goodreads and other places. So congratulations on your success, and try not to get writer's cramp from all the typing that you do for all the words that you write.
I never have enough time, Ashley, for what I do want to write. There's so much there. I'm very fortunate in that there's always more to come. So. Yeah, I'm okay
great.
in that.
Well, thank you for getting up so early to be on the show. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and as I said earlier, congratulations on your success, and may you achieve even more before you write that last word.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you for having me here. I've been looking forward very much to talking to you.
Okay, well, take care, everyone, and remember this show will be archived, and you can save a copy of it on your blog, you can share it on Facebook, you can share it on Twitter, and listen to the archives anytime you want. Mr. O'Neill, thank you so much for being a guest this evening, or I should say morning for your time. I do appreciate it, and best of luck to you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Ashley.